Does your washer sound like a airplane taking off? If it does, this video will show you what the problem is. On this one, it is a bearing, which is that top bearing right there. And we got this bearing kit and a bearing press to put in the bearing. But anyways, we're gonna show you exactly how to do it. If you guys need the bearing and the bearing press, you can actually get the parts together. They have kits for them now. I'll have that linked below, but stay tuned for the repair. It's gonna be fun. For me, it takes me about 45 minutes to get this done, but I've had a lot of practice at it. So if you guys are doing this, it'll probably take hour and a half, maybe 2 hours if you stick with it. But anyways, we're gonna start taking this washer apart. We gotta lift the top up and get that basket up. So you got those 3 screws in the back. Then we're gonna lift this top up. And also that lid on this washer, I mean, it's pretty stiff whenever it comes up. So it's a good idea to tape that thing. But anyways, we're gonna get this tub ring off. And that's the recirculation hose that you gotta pop off. Just get you some pliers and get that hose clamp out of the way. Then there's clips all the way around it. When you get all those clips off, then that tub ring will come out. Next, we're getting out this swash plate. So you just pop that cap off, and I believe it's a 7/16 nut. Bolt you got to get out. Then that swash plate comes out. And then if you're lucky, this basket will just pull right out. If not, you'll need a basket puller, and I'll have that linked down below as well. But if it's easy, nice. But once you get that basket out, we're gonna tip this thing back. We got to get underneath it to take off this motor. And what you need is a 1/4 inch Allen head to get this first part off. So we're gonna go ahead and get this rotor off. Yeah, once you get that screw all the way out, you just wiggle her back and forth until she comes off like that. Next, we're going to take off the stator. I think those are more 7/16 bolts that you got to take out. There's 4 of them. Once you get those 4 off, then that thing will drop. But once you drop the stator, there's some harnesses you got to remove off of it. One is the speed sensor, and then the other is just the power going to the motor to make it spin. Anyways, here's a look at the harnesses and taking them off. Alright, harnesses off, motor's out of the way. We're going to start taking out this shaft. There's just a nut on the bottom of it, and you got to hold that shaft to get that nut off. But once you get that nut off, grab yourself a hammer, and we're going to beat that thing up until it breaks free. She's free, so stick up that shaft into the hole to push it up, and then we're going to get back up to the top to push out that bottom bearing. And you just want to position that post on the edges of the bearing until it breaks free, but a couple of hits should do it. The hard one is the upper bearing. You don't have much room underneath to swing and get a good hit on it, so you got to do a lot more hits to get that thing open. So if you can actually tilt this thing back even more, and there's a good look at what you're going to be hitting. But you just, again, put that post up there, hit it with the hammer until that bearing comes out. And once you do that, bearing's out, then we're going to put it back in. Alright, top bearing's out, so we're gonna bring her back down and get that bearing out, and after we get it out, we are going to clean it. Clean that area where the top bearing goes into. But this is the bearing that was actually causing the noise. She's rusted, and I know you can't hear it whenever I'm moving that bearing, but whenever it's moving at a higher speed, you can hear it, and then the vibrations just spread out everywhere. But anyways, yeah, give this area a good cleaning. All you need is a rag, and just wipe up any water or anything that's left. But once you get that clean, we're going to get this bearing press and start with the top bearing, and you'll see that here in a second. But first, here is a look at the bearing kit. You'll have the shaft in that big long bag. You'll have some grease, some adhesive, and of course the bearings and everything else. But this bag here has the lower and upper bearing along with the bearing seal or shaft seal, that nut that goes back on that shaft. There's the adhesive and the grease, and here's the shaft itself. First thing we do is we take that top bearing in our bearing press, and we're going to take off the bottom part, and we're just going to have this and put the top bearing in, which is the bigger bearing. Then we're just going to set it in the hole. Then we're going to get back underneath, and we'll use the other half of that bearing press tool and put the lower bearing on. And then there's a little washer you want to put around it, and then that longer piece that you'll actually, that piece right there, you want that to go on top of that washer. And that's just so that shaft just slides down in there and it's all nice and smooth and everything. Anyways, I'm not an engineer. You just got to put it back in. Anyways, we are ready to put the lower bearing on, and you're going to slide that long metal wide shaft up in there first, and then we're going to push in the bottom part of the bearing press. And then we got another bearing that goes on the outside of it, which is that one right there, and then follow up with the nut. That bearing makes it easier for this thing to actually press in that bearing. But all you do here is grab yourself, I think it might be a 3/4 or a 5/8, but I use an adjustable wrench, and you pretty much just tighten it up until it's tight. Yeah, once she's tight, I mean, you'll know. You won't be able to tighten it anymore, but after that's done, you take that nut off and you get that bearing press out of there. Then once you get that bearing press out, it's time to put the shaft in. And then sometimes the shaft doesn't always want to go in the way that nice and smooth. You may have to tap it with a hammer or push the bearing out and repress it if you guys can't get it in there to work, or get it to get down into its spot nice and easy. But getting that shaft in, once it's in there, well, we'll get to that here in a second, because I actually have to tap it in with the hammer a bit. But I'll get this shaft and try and push it down in there, and she won't go down in all the way. But whenever you put the shaft in, you see the threads on the bottom, you want to make sure that goes in first. But you see she's not going in nice and smooth like she's supposed to. And that long metal cylinder that we put in there, you may be able to move it over, because you may be able to see if that's in the way or whatnot. And a lot of times that's just it. You move that thing over, then you try and put the shaft back in, and it may go down all the way, or you may get it down pretty much almost all the way, and then you just got to tap it in the rest of the way with a hammer. That's what I did here. You see she's down there almost all the way, but you want to get something so you don't damage the shaft whenever you do hammer her in the rest of the way. But once she's down in there, you do want to check that bottom bearing and make sure it doesn't or it didn't pop out. But once you get that shaft in, you want to get back underneath it and put this nut on, and you got to get something to hold the shaft, and then tighten that nut on all the way until she's nice and snug. That's what, you know, keeps the shaft in space and in its place, and the basket just doesn't, you know, pop out during spin or something like that. You want to make sure that's good and tight. Once that's tight, we're going to go back up top again, and we're going to put in the bearing seal. That's one of the most important parts. Like, if we don't put in that seal, this thing's going to leak, and then all this work you've done is for nothing. So yeah, I'm just going to finish getting this nut on, and then we'll talk about getting in that seal. All right, nuts on, and now it's to the seal. The grease, you want to put that, if the bearing is upside down, there's that little groove, and you want to put grease all the way around inside that groove. Once we get done inside the groove, you want to use the grease on the inside as well. And what the top, or what the bottom is, you know, where it has the groove. And then if you look on the inside of the bearing or inside of the seal, there's more grooves, and you want to do the lower end of it, so when you put it on the shaft, the grease slides up. And on the outside, you use the adhesive, which is in this bottle here. And again, there's two grooves, and you want to go on the lower groove and get it all the way around. And this can be tricky, and this adhesive, I mean, it is some sticky stuff. I mean, once you get it, if you get it on like your washing machine or something, you do want to wipe that up immediately, or it's going to be a pain in the butt to get it off. I think you'd have to use Goo Gone. I mean, if you, but anyways, I'll talk about that later. Once you get the adhesive and everything on it, you put it over the shaft and the PVC pipe that comes with it. I mean, it's, you just push it down, and then boom, that's it. Seal is in, and then we're going to go around again with adhesive so we don't have a leak. And then once you're done with this part, you're going to want to let this sit for at least an hour before you put any water in it. You want that adhesive to cure so you don't have a leak. Anyways, while that is curing, we are going to put the motor back on, and we start with the stator. And you remember the harnesses we took off, that position sensor, it has some tabs, and you see it right there and there. But yeah, I know this is not a good look for it, but there's only one way that this thing goes on, and as long as you match up those tabs on the stator with the tabs on the sensor, and it fits right, I mean, you'll know, because something will be popping up or something will be sticking out. You want it to be nice and flush whenever that rotor goes on top of it. But this may be one of the the tougher things to actually get on, but once we get this on and then the other harness on, we'll mount it into place. Alright, that gray piece that came off with that motor, you do want to put that thing back on top. And the wire harnesses have a hole, and it only lines up one way, so you'll know if it's right. And then the stator goes up one way as well, and it'll only be nice and flush once you get it in the right spot. That's something you'll probably have to play with a little bit. But once we get that into place, there's that washer actor-like thing right there you want to put back on, and then we're going to bolt it on. 4 bolts, just like the ones you took off. Just put them back in. Alright, stator's in place. Now we're going to get this rotor back on. You may have to wiggle it around to get it on the shaft correctly, but you'll know once it's there. And then once you get it on, you just tighten that nut up. Also, if you get an F51 afterwards, you didn't tighten this thing up all the way. That's a little tip for you. Yeah, but once that is on, time to get the basket on. Yeah, there's not much to it from here on out. We're just gonna grab this basket, put the basket back in, and then put the wash plate on after we get the basket in, then get those screws on the back. Or once we get the lid back down, secure it, you know, like it is when you guys normally use it. Wait for that adhesive to cure, and then go ahead and test it. Make sure she doesn't leak on you. So remember to wait an hour or so after you put that adhesive on, and then give her a test. But anyways, I'm gonna let you guys just watch the rest of this. I don't think I have any more tips or anything like that for you, but if you have any questions or anything for me, leave a comment below. Like it if it's helped, and thanks for watching.